Origin just home reaction. This is how Russia ruined its only aircraft carrier. Bachal, not what you think. Only aircraft carrier. They only have one? So this the video by Not What You Think. I think I watched one video from this. I guess it was a designation thing, right? Of the different boats, how they are different, like yeah, uh, fighters and things like for destroyers and things like that. So there's also like helicopter designation that I've been watching. It's going to be interesting as well. I think I'm not good enough of that, but yeah. This is about how Russia ruined its only. What does that mean, only? How does Russia only have one aircraft carrier? That doesn't even make sense. Like, how they're gonna attack anything that they can't reach? If you're gonna attack anything that is like long distances, like over the sea, you need aircraft carrier. How else are you gonna do it, right? Okay, Russia can attack Europe, sure, right? Russia can, but what if they had? Let's just say, think of a scenario that's never gonna happen in a million years. But if they have to like invade U.S. mainland, how are they gonna do that? They don't have aircraft carriers. What? So I don't know. Like, if you want to be a like dominant power, don't you need an aircraft carrier? I don't understand that one. How they don't have any? This is the one thing I would never like. As soon as I saw this title, like, what the fuck? I'm pretty sure also remember watching a comment recently. Somebody said like they stole an aircraft carrier and that's the only thing they have. Like, why? They have all the other things like submarines and things and all that, right? All the like modern tech you can think of. Modern is like, they have submarines, they have nuclear submarines, right? They have like fighter jets, they have like Su-57, things like that, stealth fifth generation, I guess. You can argue like they're not that good and whatever, but at least they have it. They like that checkbox is like checked, right? How they don't have like aircraft carriers? I don't know. Aircraft carrier is like your small airfield or an island that you bring with you that can do a lot of things because it's like it has everything. It's a big ass thing, right? That Ford class carrier that we just saw, like that's insanely big. Even the Nimitz one was like insanely big, but now it's like even better reactors and everything that can like supply a city if need be. Like they can do a lot of things. So, I don't know. So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so that way I know which type of videos to react to more. I've been watching this military style of video recently a lot. So if you haven't seen that, check out the link in the description. There you'll find all the other videos. And yeah, also Twitter, like if you don't get notification that YouTube sometimes like has an error, I always post links there. So Twitter is and Instagram too in the description, I guess. And yeah, let's do it.
This aircraft carrier was stolen from Ukraine and then ruined by the Russian Navy. But how Russia managed to use up most of the carrier's service life without the ship even leaving the dock is not what you think.
Ukraine?
During her design phase, the newest Soviet heavy aircraft carrier was called Soviet Union. In 1982, when she was laid down in Soviet Ukraine, she was named Riga. Then, when launched in 1985, she was renamed to Leonid Brezhnev. And when she underwent sea trials in 19...
Yeah, okay. This is just insane photo to me. They're transporting that great, but what if like some accident happens, slides left, right? All these people are fucked. I would not be standing here. I don't care how secure it feels.
She was renamed to Leonid Brezhnev. And when she underwent sea trials in 1989, she was known as Tbilisi. When Tbilisi was about to enter service, the Soviet Navy was not ready to run such a ship. There were no air groups, no task forces of which Tbilisi would be, and no air traffic control groups without which Tbilisi couldn't function.
What?
But worst of all, there was no infrastructure to support such a ship. And spoiler alert, such an infrastructure still doesn't exist.
Okay, seriously, man, I don't understand the concept. Like, they don't think that they need this or something? Because if they can have like all other things that just say, right? They're like even like going insane on like submarine dependent. What was that like new Poseidon weapon or whatever they're building? Allegedly, you can say allegedly about all that, but still at least they're saying like we are focusing on that. They're not even trying to build any infrastructure around like an aircraft carrier. What they think like they don't need it or something? I don't understand that.
Even the carrier's first commanding officer, Captain Viktor Yarygin, told a Soviet newspaper that the Soviet Navy was not prepared for the appearance of a ship like Tbilisi. You see, during the Soviet times, most funding was allocated to the ship development and manufacturing, and not enough money was left over for routine upkeep of the existing ships.
Damn, okay.
As the Soviet Union was enduring its
psychologically, if I say we have it, are we maintaining it? Let's not think about that.
Final days, the Soviet Navy did not want their capital ships to be named after cities that had open opposition to the Soviet Union. They wanted Tbilisi and her sister ship Riga renamed. The government gave in, and on September 19, 1990, it was announced that Tbilisi was renamed to Admiral of the Fleet of the Soviet Union Kuznetsov, and the under construction sister ship was renamed to Varyag. And this was kind of a big deal, especially if you're already familiar with the Marine superstition list. Bringing bananas on the ship is bad luck. If you see a redhead before boarding a ship, it's very bad luck.
That's not true. No way that's real. Just tell me that's not real. Say in the comment that's bullshit. Okay, we're gonna launch this ship. All the reds that stay in your home, don't even come out. But I have to go to like this school or college. No, you have a holiday today. Like, you're a bad luck. That shit can't be real, man.
And changing the name of a ship is very, very bad luck. Now, I don't believe in superstitions, but I do believe in diversification. I mean, who wouldn't want to own a piece of Van Gogh? And I'm not talking about his ear. I'm talking about his art. Contemporary art has historically had an insane performance, outpacing S&P 500 by 164% for the last 26 years straight. And now you and I can also own a piece of fine art from Picasso or Van Gogh in an affordable way, thanks to Masterworks, who's sponsoring today's video. Masterworks is a disruptive investment platform that leverages technology and industry expertise and enables you to invest in the same kind of art billionaires collect, but for a fraction of what they pay. Because at Masterworks, you can invest in just a portion of these paintings. The art market has been tactically used as an instrument to protect wealth and defend against inflation for generations. With Masterworks, you can have control over how much you invest while you're still part of the $1.7 trillion art market. I think it's a genius way to further
your shares of some painting. That's weird.
Diversify your investments,
makes sense,
especially
sure,
given today's volatile markets and raging inflation. As Not What You Think viewers, you can get priority access and skip Masterworks waitlist. Just click the link in the description. You too can own a piece of fine art. Admiral Kuznetsov is truly
this is not like, Lord of Scotland thing, landowner thing, whatever that was. It's not like that, is it?
Misfortunate ship whose adventures began when Russia secretly plotted to steal her from the newly independent Ukraine. The carrier's misfortunes started with the downfall of the...
All of that. What do you mean by stealing? If it was part of Soviet Union, and it just happened to be in Ukraine when Soviet Union fell, and now Ukraine is a new country, does it belong to Ukraine? Did Ukrainian build it when they were part of Soviet Union? Like Ukrainian engineers, Ukrainian people build it, then yeah, it's stealing. But if like Soviet Union, like people from like different part of Soviet Union, Moscow, whatever, like different places, if they like build this and it just happened to be in Ukraine when Soviet Union fell, that's not really stealing, is it?
The Soviet Union. On August 24th, 1991, Ukraine declared independence from the USSR. Immediately, tensions with Russia began on what to do with the Black Sea Fleet, since the majority of officers were pro-Russia. The Ukrainian president, Leonid Kravchuk, proclaimed that Admiral Kuznetsov is Ukrainian property and ordered the commander of the ship to remain docked in Ukraine. But the commander, Viktor Yarygin, disagreed. In his eyes, Ukraine did not exist as a country yet, because the independence referendum had not been held yet. So on December 1st, 1991, the very same day that 92% of Ukrainians were busy voting for independence during the referendum, aircraft carrier Admiral Kuznetsov left the Black Sea under the orders from the Russian Northern Fleet and headed to Murmansk. 1/3 of the ship's crew remained on the carrier, with the rest staying behind in Ukraine. With construction still incomplete, Admiral Kuznetsov traveled thousands of kilometers away from the shipbuilder and ended up in a port that lacked proper infrastructure to house such a capital ship. But despite being
all up there, so in Ukraine they were building this ship. Only in Ukraine they could have built this ship. That is where the infrastructure is to build it. So I'm guessing the people who build it and the engineers are Ukrainian. So in that way, it makes sense. Like if Ukraine is its own entity, this ship belongs to them, I guess. But it's always like a touch and go. Like if like one biggest Soviet Union now it like fall apart, the majority of that is like now Russia, right? Like which weapon belongs to what, right? Because technically, like all the Cold War shit of Soviet Union, Russia inherited that, right? I mean, before it was like USA versus Soviet Union, now it's USA versus Russia, not USA versus Ukraine. So they can argue like this, like okay, everything fell apart, everything like Ukraine and other countries like bordering countries became their own thing. But this like major things like aircraft and things like that is ours, something like that. I don't know.
Being unfinished, on January 20th, 1991, Kuznetsov was commissioned as the flagship of the Russian Navy, but it didn't receive any aircraft for 2 years and wasn't even fully operational for another 3 years. The carrier's first deployment began in 1995 in the Mediterranean Sea, which lasted about 3 months. Her mission was to show off Russia's new flagship and practice sorties during favorable Mediterranean weather conditions. The carrier's main role was status projection rather than power projection, as Admiral Kuznetsov was retained and sustained for Russia's appearance of being a major naval power. After all, an aircraft carrier with fixed-wing aircraft is a type of capital ship that very few countries possess. But Kuznetsov is more of a Potemkin village, which if you're unfamiliar with, is a construction whose purpose is to provide an external facade to a country that's doing poorly, to make it look like they're doing better than they really are. Kinda like Instagram, but for countries. This carrier is not the front piece of a modern fleet. Rather, behind Kuznetsov is a Russian Navy trying desperately to maintain the resemblance of the once large, impressive, and far-ranging Soviet Navy. While on the outside Kuznetsov might look mighty, during its first deployment, 2,000 embarked men were rationing water, which was only available for 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, because the ship's evaporators, which distill seawater, broke down. At one point, the US Navy was poised to help the Russian flagship by providing fresh water.
Damn,
but it gets worse. Admiral Kuznetsov's propulsion system...
That's insanity. Why do you have a flagship? What threat do you have? It's like US. By the way, who's helping you? Yeah, it's US. How does... Okay.
Consists of 8 pressurized boilers, which are extremely unreliable. As a result, on multiple occasions, including her first deployment, the carrier lost all propulsion and was dead at sea. Even though the propulsion system could frequently be repaired at sea, on occasion, Kuznetsov had to be towed back to port. For this reason, during the 2016 Syrian campaign, the flagship of the Russian Navy had to be accompanied by a tugboat, Nikolai Chiker, which in hindsight was a good idea because yet again, Kuznetsov lost propulsion, and with the help of this mighty tugboat, she was towed back to port during a not-so...
Held together by duct tape and cello tape. Is that what it is? Damn, this is insane. Wait a minute. So they have this aircraft carrier right now, which is like diesel power. It's just like... I mean, US have ridiculous amount of nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Like this is diesel powered apparently. I don't know. It's just like every tech they might have is like so... at this point, does it even matter?
So fair weather. Potemkin village. According to Western sources, Russia ended up procuring more carrier-based airplanes that it managed to train qualified pilots for, which is kind of ironic, as the opposite charade happened during the first deployment of the Soviet aircraft carrier Kiev in the 1970s. By the time the first Soviet aircraft carrier was ready for its first deployment, only 6 Yak-38 aircraft had been produced and embarked on the ship. So in order to make Kiev look more mighty than she really was in front of American...
Wait a minute, Yak? What is that? I think I've heard of the Yak. I know Su, I know MiG, they're like 2 different type of companies. Who makes Yak?
Intelligence services, Soviets engaged in an elaborate deception. Sailors repainted the airframe numbers on the aircraft after each sortie in order to inflate the number of Yak-38 aircraft that was supposedly stored inside the carrier's hangars. And you gotta give it to them, because their deception worked.
They pulled the same shit like Lancia pulled. oh, we need this many like cars. Oh, we have the show. Like, look at all these cars. Now let's take a breakfast. And they just like took those car parks to whole another, like, all those cars to whole another car park. And there you go. There's another half of them. There you go. They pulled that shit here. Let's change the number. So everybody's like who's surveilling, and they are surveilling. They can see that we have double.
American media later reported that the Kyiv aircraft carrier had embarked at least 60 aircraft, while in reality, it was just 6.
What?
Aircraft. Later reported that the Kyiv aircraft carrier had embarked at least 60 aircraft, while in reality, it was just 6.
16? He said 6. What?
We should clarify that Kuznetsov is not an aircraft carrier. At least legally speaking, she does not identify as an aircraft carrier. Otherwise, she'd be stuck in the Black Sea. That's because according to the Montreux Convention, the passage of aircraft carriers heavier than 15,000 tons are prohibited through the Turkish Straits. The easy workaround was for the Soviets to designate Kuznetsov and all their other aircraft carriers as heavy aircraft carrying cruisers. During 3 decades of service in the Russian Navy, Kuznetsov only made 6 short deployments to the Mediterranean and Atlantic. She spent most of her service time docked, in Murmansk or in shipyards for repair. Her average seagoing time was around 15 days per year, and she only saw 1 combat deployment in Syria in 2016. Arguably, the most memorable event from this.
Imagine that in Syrian time, like they're actually having some work done. They're like, what the fuck, it's working? None of us see that coming. This is actually like worth something. Come on, we are actually doing missions. How did that happen?
Syrian deployment was the black smoke. The black exhaust was attributed to many different causes, such as the use of low-quality fuel, operator error for not preheating fuel, and so on. But it's becoming evident that the likely cause was simply the carrier's worn-out power plant. But how could this be? During her 30-year career, Kuznetsov has only spent 450 days at sea in total. That's nowhere near enough time to wear out a carrier's power plant. There are reports emerging that 4 of her 8 KVG-4 boilers need to be replaced during midlife refit as they are worn out. You see,
it's a carrier, so I was assuming it's a diesel engine, but like they're making boilers. That makes sense. That why would you make that kind of a big ass diesel engine? I don't know. Yeah, see, it's like still processing in my head. Like, okay, I guess sure boats have diesel engine, but at this scale of boat, come on. They are boilers.
The Soviet Union only bothered to create these gigantic machines and not their permanent bases.
Like how the smoke goes over the air, like, oh, that's where the aircraft carrier is. You don't even need a radar or anything. You can just aim it. You can just see it is there.
Instead of getting shore-based electricity and hot water when Kuznetsov was docked, her boilers were thrashed prematurely, wearing out the power plants. As she sat quietly for most of her life on the pier side, the useful life of her machinery was spent providing electricity and water to the crew on board. In contrast, when Nimitz-class carriers are docked in their permanent ports, full shore services are provided to supply electricity, water, and so on. The nuclear reactors would then be shut down. If services are not available, the reactor that has used up the most fuel will be shut down, while the other one provides power to the ship. But the wearing out of the propulsion...
I think they specifically do that because they want those Nimitz class and Ford class, now to be on the sea as much as they can. So it's like, I'm pretty sure nuclear plants can basically power for a long time, so they don't have to shut it down. But they do that, so it's like maximum, like why risk it, right? Because they might have to be on the ocean for like a long time, for years and out.
Propulsion system and other machinery is not the only issue. Pretty much everything else on the carrier also has a tough time holding up due to her age, particularly the arresting gear. In 2016, during the deployment in Syria, 2 combat aircraft crashed when attempting to land. An Su-33 broke the arresting cable and rolled off the deck. The pilot ejected and survived. A few days later, 3 aircraft took off, but
the pilot's response like, oh shit, it's like last second. Otherwise, if he had like it was in the water, that was insanity. This shit, look at that.
Ejected
last
and
second
survived.
thing.
A few days later, 3 aircraft took off, but only 2 were able to land on the ship. That's because 2 of the carrier's 4 arresting wires snapped during the second landing. The pilot of the 3rd airplane was ordered to circle the carrier and wait until the crew fixed the arresting gear. 1 hour later, the MiG-29K ran out of fuel and the pilot had to eject.
I was about to say that, like, how long, man? How much fuel is there? If it had that much fuel, it wouldn't need an aircraft carrier, would it? There's a reason why they have to be deployed from an aircraft carrier. They don't have that much fuel in it. So how much is it? Like, there you go, an hour, there you go.
In 2017, the carrier returned back to Murmansk to undergo midlife refit, which would extend her service life by another 25 years. As part of the refit, the Russian flagship had to spend some time in dry dock, and the only available one in northern Russia was the PD-50 floating dry dock. But on October 30th, 2018, the floating dock lost its supply of electricity from shore. As the pumps stopped pumping out water out of the ballast tanks, the dock slowly leaned and sank. As a result, one of the 2 70-ton cranes ended up falling on the carrier, leaving a 13 by 15-foot hole in the flight deck.
What the fuck?
The sinking of PD-50 could have been prevented if only the floating dock had emergency generators, which it did. But how good is a generator that has no diesel in the fuel tank? It later turned out that no diesel fuel had ever been purchased for these generators, which is not surprising at all.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Why? Like duct tape and cello tape. That's what it is. Everything can be fixed by that. Everything's gonna be fine. Logistics, who cares?
Because the general director of the shipyard that was contracted to repair Kuznetsov was later arrested and charged for stealing $650,000 from the money that was allocated to the repair work. After the sinking of the PD-50 floating dock, it was announced that 2 adjacent 650-foot-long dry docks in Murmansk shipyard would be combined into one massive 1,300-foot dock. 30 years after commissioning, Russia is finally putting proper support in place for its one and only aircraft carrier. In a way, the past misfortunes of Admiral Kuznetsov can be attributed to the Russian government's failure to invest in proper infrastructure. Because not having an aircraft carrier is not an option for Russia. But the real question is, once Kuznetsov completes her midlife refit and comes out of the dry dock, would the mighty tugboat still be there for her or not?
The fuck? See, I don't get this. I don't get this. I mean, they don't need it? Of course they need it. So, like, you can say all the shit about Russia, but it's like a lot of things that they are doing, right? They're even trying to develop like next generation of planes and things and that, right? Like they have submarines and things. What, you can't find money to build like an aircraft carrier? Like, you need it. I mean, US has aircraft carrier, and if you consider opposition of US, you need to build something. You have like one aircraft carrier with a boiler power, like that's not even close. Of all the things the US has, all the aircraft carriers, they have like fucking nuclear power now, the Ford class. How does this work? Like, I don't know. I guess they just keep this to fight some wars in Middle East and things like that. Like, I mean, they can't even hope to go in front of US with this shit, I guess. So yeah, it's mostly for like Syria and things like that. Like they said, I guess, I don't know. Alright, well, that was like how Russia ruined its only aircraft carrier by channel. Not what you think. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.